Welcome to the Garage Network podcast. Join us and the occasional special guest as we discuss everything automotive, from fixing cars as a technician, owning an automotive workshop or business, overall work-life balance, and even the occasional laugh. In this episode of TGN Torques, we were joined by Michael Werle. Michael is the General Manager of Bosch Automotive Aftermarket, Australia and New Zealand. In this episode, we discussed Michael's career path, but also talked about what direction that he believes the industry is going, things to be looking out for, things to prepare for. All in all, a very optimistic outlook. So we hope that you guys enjoy this podcast.
Well, tonight on TGN Tech Talks, we have Michael Werle from Bosch, Australia. Michael, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
There you go, Michael.
More than welcome.
I think we should actually start and maybe, Michael, if you can give us a bit of an insight as to what you actually do at the Bosch world.
Yeah, that's probably something that my associates also ask me all the time as well, what I'm actually doing as a general manager. I would probably explain my job in two ways. So I think the role of a general manager, at least the way I look at it, is obviously you are responsible for setting the strategy. So a little bit the direction where your organization is moving. That's one part. You have to continuously communicate that strategies to your associates so that they kind of know, okay, this is where we're at, this is where we're going, and this is the pace we're going. So these are the priorities of what we have to work on. So that's, I think, one part of the job. And then you would technically flip the pyramid, and I actually support my associates on the different products and projects that they're working on. And it can be really anything. So from supply chain, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales. Obviously, I'm also visiting a lot of customers. I go into the market, collect feedback. So I would describe my position mainly as the main servant of the organization, to see and help wherever I can and where they need and where they feel I can add value. So in some areas, they would probably also tell me, that's nice that you offer your support, Michael, but no, not needed. That's all good. So it's probably a mix of strategy, direction, and service to the organization in whatever capacity necessary.
So, well, yeah. And I'm gonna assume now that you've been with Bosch for a while, or is it new to the role, or has been there for a while? You have.
No, I've already been with the company for many, many years. As it's, I think I'm getting into my 19th year of a Bosch career. And if you want to, we can also go a little bit into my origin story. So how I
love to hear that.
came into the role. Maybe let's start a little bit at where I grew up, because I think that's important for context too. So I'm actually from a very small farming village in the northern part of Germany. So like a typical blue-collar farming community. Most of my friends were in farming. So it was a very, I would say, simple beginnings. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. My dad, electrician at the local hydropower plant. And kind of started off after school with a apprenticeship as an industrial mechanic. So that was a little bit the starting point of my career. So dropped out at 16 in school, didn't want to go to school anymore, and said, okay, I need to do something with my hands. And worked actually as a sausage company. They were producing sausage machines, and actually a global player. So that was the first touch point for me to get a little bit my broadened view on the world, because they were having businesses, even though it was close to my village, the company in Japan and the US, all around the world. So that kind of got me interested in expanding myself and kind of also going back to school, which I then did after the apprenticeship. Then did my typical school years, uni, became a trained economist, which is very different from where I started out. But then I also thought, okay, how could I combine these two worlds that I was living in? So how could I combine the mechanical and the economist world? And found Bosch as an interesting company to join at a time, and joined in the headquarter of the Automotive Aftermarket division, which we are kind of part of here in Australia, taking care of everything after a car hits the road out of a manufacturing plant. I was there in a commercial function, responsible for many different tasks. So I took care of 2 business units, wipers at the time and rotating machines. Also helped the CFO of the company and kind of got a little bit to know how the whole operation works. So it was very close at the board level as well. So one of my first bosses, I remember this to this day, sent me already in one of the first meetings to the head of the company. It was quite amazing. And so I was preparing the meeting and said, okay, you prepared it, you run it. And I was sent there on my own into this. And gave me a quite good overview on how the company works and how everything functions.
Michael,
that was a really good.
I was just going to ask, whereabouts is that in Germany? So where was the village?
So it's a little bit in the Baden-Württemberg area. So this is the, I'd say, automotive hub. So you would find a lot of the automotive players, suppliers, and OEMs in that area. So it's not far away from Stuttgart, where, for example, Mercedes-Benz is not too far away from Porsche. So they are all kind of in this cluster together with their suppliers.
And was that close to your village?
It was already a little bit of a drive for me. So I already left the town in order to pursue the job there. So there's already like 700 kilometers away from where I grew up. So also had to leave friends behind. So it was one of the first forays a little bit out of that. But for me, it was always clear already when I entered the company that my real passion would be working in an international context. So as a kid, I already had this dream to like visit foreign countries, live there, experience the culture. And that was also the main drive not to become an entrepreneur, because when I finished uni, I had a short period where I was contemplating about it, whether I would create my own company, start a small business, combine what I learned. But then I was thinking, okay, how could I do this if I really want to go abroad, and couldn't really see a path. And a global company was a good path in order to pursue this. But you always have to kind of start at a headquarter level in large organizations if you want to be sent out to places, because you kind of need to acquire sufficient skills that someone would need outside of Germany to really be able to help them. And that was kind of the formative 3 years. And it was funny, in the job interview that I had at the time, I already told them I'm going to do a 3 years gig with you guys, and then you either send me away or I'm going to be leaving the company. So there was already the starting conversation.
You said that, or you thought that?
I said it, and this was really funny. They really kept to that promise. They said, yes, if you do your job well, if you prepare well, we're going to send you. And they really did. And this was really also had amazing bosses at the time who put a lot of faith and trust in me, gave me a tremendous opportunity. So one of the first then forays into foreign territory was Denmark, where we acquired a family business, Holger Christiansen at the time. So they are also very big in the rotating machine world and cargo parts. Even some of them end up here in Australian shores. And I was sent there to help them to get integrated into the Bosch group. So it was one of the first Bosch employees in their company when we acquired them, integrated them, especially in the financial commercial areas. Later on, a whole team of people came for the other functions. And that was already a really interesting experience also to see a different culture, different working styles. So that also then helped me to further develop my skill sets. It was kind of then a jumping point to Taiwan, where was my first foray a little bit into the Asia Pacific region. So we acquired another company. So they kind of believed, okay, Michael, you made so many mistakes in the first integration. You must have learned a few lessons out of this. So
hopefully you make a few less this time. Yeah.
Exactly. So in Taiwan, so to do a little bit a better job in this. So then I worked in Taiwan for about 3 to 4 years, helping them to get integrated. Also similar story, family business. They did rotating machines and wipers, so Unipoint. They also, I think, had quite substantial business in Australia as well at the time. So that was then the next foray. And quite interesting because I got to work with a team that only spoke Chinese. And so all my associates, I was the first foreigner that they ever knew on a personal level. So it was quite
wow. That would have been, so you were in Taiwan for 3 years.
Yeah, so almost 4 years. Yeah.
Would you say the language is the biggest barrier, the biggest hurdle?
I mean, it was really interesting. So I got an interpreter. So when I had my first visit, when we still were in the merger acquisition process, I got to know a professor who did some interpretation for us when we kind of looked at the target and also had some interviews with the owners and some of the associates. And I asked him whether he would have some really great students who would just graduate, whether I could hire one of them as my interpreter. And he gave me this very special lady, Amy. So he became, I think, for me, the link to the organization. So she had this like incredible empathetic powers, would always know what's going on in people's minds and hearts. Quite interesting, and could translate this, which enabled me to lead the team in a very effective way. Was really fascinating for me to see the possibility to drive so much change in an organization, because you have to imagine family business entering a corporate space. You more or less have to fundamentally change every process, every activity you used to do.
And I can imagine she must have done a very good job of translating the emotion and the things that were going on, like to understand, because you just sort of sit there and you could go, what's going on? Like, and you wouldn't have any idea, I reckon that's amazing.
Yeah, it was incredible to see. And also the manager of the organization was a 56 or 57-year-old lady, basically built up the entire organization, stayed with the company, I think, since she was a very young lady. And she was the catalyst for the entire change as well. So it's also amazing to see. So in many ways, that team in Taiwan was way more open for change and was driving change much faster and more effectively than my Danish team, where you would normally think, okay, culture, language is not a barrier. So naturally, you would have an easier time, but it was actually the opposite. And of course, the key was a person who would be able to translate, not only the words, but also body language, usually all these nonverbal cues that you would get, which also usually are the hardest to read if you're operating in a foreign culture.
Yeah, cool.
It's awesome.
So it was quite an interesting experience. From there, I moved to Singapore. So this was the kind of regional headquarter of Asia Pacific. Took over a commercial role, was responsible for Japan, Korea, the whole ASEAN region, and also Australia. So that was kind of my first touch point with Australia and the team. Was working alongside the regional president, who was responsible for sales and marketing, and did that job for 6 years. Also, again, incredible experience, because you would get to know so many cultures. I got to travel a lot, so experience a lot of the beauty of ASEAN, could visit all the countries, did a lot of personal travel during that time. So that was also really exciting. I also spent some time in Japan, extended. I had a quite big team there as well. So got to see that side of the business. And again, very fundamentally different ways of working, different working cultures, very different people. But what I realized also during that time, you still have, no matter what culture or company you're working, a lot of shared values, no matter what language you speak or what background you have. And if you focus on those elements that link you together, you can actually act very quickly, very successful also as a team. And those different perspectives, in many cases, just enrich your view of the world, or enrich conversations, or help you problem solve better. So in many cases. So
look,
everyone's
amazing. Yeah.
I was going to go, everyone at Bosch has green blood, so it's okay. So you all bleed the same color.
Yeah, very, very, very true. Yeah, that's basically kind of brought me to Australia. Also very interesting how I got here, because I remember very well at the time we were looking for a new general manager for Australia, and I asked them, okay, what kind of type should we hire for this? So, and we didn't want to go with the traditional salesperson. So normally in a sales organization, you would traditionally go with someone who spent a lot of their careers primarily in the sales area. And I suggested that maybe this time we should go in a slightly different direction, because we had already, and we still have, a great sales manager locally with Jeff Upton. And adding another person into this wouldn't be really complementary for the team. It wouldn't really enrich the team what they already know doing. And we also found some opportunities, and what the team was always lacking was a little bit having a broader network into the world. Australia is very far away from many other places. And obviously that is something that during my different stations, I expanded and built over the years. And then at some point in time, they just asked me, okay, why are you not doing it? So if no one else really fits your profile, so maybe you want to give it a shot. And I was at the time always joking, you can offer me any job in Australia, I will take it, because the country is so beautiful. And then I said, yeah, there you go.
They called your bluff.
Yeah, exactly. So they called the bluff. And I finally arrived here about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to go. It's about 2 years ago, wasn't it, that you took over?
Yeah.
Just almost, yeah.
So did you find that having the opportunity to obviously lead in different countries, did you make the Australian transition a bit easier?
I think it obviously helps if you have done it a couple of times. So you're gonna kind of get into your own process of how you integrate into a country. Obviously, if you're living for such a long period of time abroad, you also develop certain skills. And you're just very curious as a person, because if you really do it as a serial person like I do, you're obviously getting a lot of joy out of it. So I think you're coming with the right mindset, with the right openness to the job, to listen and learn, especially before you first draw too quick assumptions, and you just try to explore how the organization is operating, how the people are operating, how the market, the customers are functioning. And I think if you pay a lot of attention and you create a lot of space for listening and learning, I think in generally a person, no matter the context or the background, will do well in those settings.
I've got a question for you, Michael. So Bosch, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Bosch is the largest non-for-profit company in the world. Is that not right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. So they have a also very unique origin story. So this founded in 1886, so it's already obviously a very old company. And the owner or the founder, Robert Bosch, who by the way also is the inventor of the traditional spark plug and the magneto. So he also did quite a bit of contributions to the modern combustion engine. But he wanted to make sure that past in his life, the purpose invented for life would be carried on. And he created this really interesting construct of a foundation, so which kind of made sure that the company would survive far beyond his time. So, and also purposely, he never created kind of a corporation that would be traded on the stock exchange. So he always wanted to make sure that the company stayed independent, and also would take a much more long-term perspective. And the proceeds of the company are all going into charitable activities. So main focus of the charity is around education, it's around health. So there's a few hospitals you would find in Germany, there are schools, and there's also international relationships which are funded through that foundation. So
That's
it's
amazing.
Also kind of a really motivating factor for the associates, because you already really work for a very specific purpose. Yeah. I think for me personally is also one of the reasons why I stuck around for such a long period in the company, because I always found it really meaningful to work for such an organization.
Is anyone from the original family, from Robert Bosch's family, still involved in the business? Any in Germany, or do you know, or are they?
Yeah, they still are. So they are in a supervisory board. So they
Yep.
have a board seat. I think it's now Christoph Bosch. So I think it's maybe fourth generation.
I think
would
that's just
assume.
amazing. I reckon that's just, and I think it gets overlooked. And we go, no, Bosch can't be a non-for-profit. They're a non-for-profit. Or they give it back. You know,
that's crazy.
Yeah. Did you know that, Costa?
Oh, look, I'd heard it before, but then I thought, oh yeah, that can't be right. Surely they're on the stock exchange somewhere, hidden under some other banner name,
Or someone owns them.
Yeah, someone owns Bosch. Yeah, but yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome.
But so there's, I mean, obviously all the other divisions. So you've got Bosch Automotive, and you've got Bosch Power Tools, and you've got Bosch Household Equipment, washers and dryers and ovens and whatever else there might be. So when you started at Bosch, were those divisions like you've just stayed in automotive, yeah?
Yeah.
There's no crossover.
I mean, already at the time when I joined the company, automotive was already kind of organized in that way. So you always would have the original equipment divisions,
yes,
who would be like mainly selling directly to the production lines of the OEMs. And then you would have the automotive aftermarket, who would deal with anything post-production. So also for us, the key vision that we have as an organization is we keep vehicles moving. So that's the motto that we work after. And also really interesting from a strategy point of view, even when I joined, actually the strategy hasn't changed. So it's always, in our case for the automotive aftermarket, the way we looked at it was always parts, some sort of diagnostics, they called it bytes at the time when I joined, and workshop services. So there's always the three components in the strategy, so that we would take care of any replacement parts that you would need to a certain quality. And this is a quite comprehensive portfolio that we're offering. At the same time, you would always ensure that you can diagnose a car in a proper way. So to understand what is the right part needed, what is the right fix for the problem that you're facing, and then also provide services towards workshops. And we do this for both the IM side of the workshops, but also for the dealers. So we have a whole organization that supports dealerships with technology, diagnostics, and tools. And of course, we do the same for the independent aftermarket with the Bosch Car Service, which I think is one of the Bosch largest workshop networks in the world. I think we have about 30,000 of those, which is quite a substantial.
That's a lot.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, so obviously on the back of that, you guys must invest pretty heavily in your R&D, your research and development.
Yeah, this is, I think, also a unique topic around Bosch, and it kind of is linked a little bit to the long-term perspective. So if you don't have to report to quarterly results and to shareholders in a traditional sense, you can take, in many cases, a slightly different view on how you want to attain certain goals. And the company is very well known for massive investments in research and development. So usually it's around, I think, 10%, at least a minimum in that area. We also have a massive amount of software engineers. So I think it's now over 30,000 software engineers. So overall, the company has around 400,000 employees. And I think in many years, we always fight about the most patents filed with a few other global 500 companies. So always a little bit in that battle. And you would also see major investments into future technologies like quantum computing. We have, I think, one of the largest artificial intelligence centers of any company of that size. So, and in many cases, the benefit into those investments, you would only see many, many years into the future. So we're still at that unique position that allows us to take those calls. But sometimes, of course, also a challenge because you can't easily acquire money from stock exchange. So you always have to make sure that those funds come from your own business proceedings.
Yeah, but I was going to say that's trajectory. So that's very long term. They're not returns on those sorts of things that you're doing are way into the future, and sometimes boards don't like spending that sort of money. people don't like investing in that sort of thing until they can see they want everyone wants instant returns today.
Yeah, I mean, there's also always the pressure, right? So of shareholders, and also you can, of course, reasonably expect sometimes certain returns if you put down investments. So I, of course, always also can understand why companies act that way. But yes, puts us in a sometimes unique position that allows transformations to take place and really think about those transformations from a long-term perspective.
So off the back of that, I'm going to ask this question. I don't know whether you had this one down, Costa, but I'm going to go. How do you think we're going to go moving into the future? What are your predictions, ideas? How do you think the automotive industry is going to change over the next 10 to 20 years, or even 5 to 10 years? It doesn't have to be 10 to 20. In the immediate future, into the long-term future, what are your predictions, Mike?
I mean, in principle, it already took place. And I think one of the early examples of this is a Tesla. When you look at the car, completely different architecture, everything built around one operating system, which is basically the platform that all the other players are starting to emulate. So, and it becomes more and more, I would say, the car of the future, an iPhone on wheels. So that also from a customer perspective will become more and more important, that a lot of features are driven by software rather than hardware. And of course, you also have a lot of changes in terms of ownership around vehicles. So you can see that fleets starting to play a much bigger role in that space. Some of the new OEMs, in some cases, you can't even own the car anymore. So you can only lease the car. So that you can see a lot of those new business models that are emerging, and that will also shape the industry to a large degree, I would say. There's a lot of shared mobility, especially when you are going into Europe. You can see a lot of that. US also has a lot of examples of that. I think the interesting thing for me is understanding what's going to be the pace of this development. So how fast is it going to come? And I think in many cases, there will be huge differences depending on where you live. Also, if you live, for example, in a country like Norway, so I always use this also with the customers as an example, where tremendous government funding went into this space. There's a lot of incentives for people to make a shift. They already have 90+% of new cars are electric vehicles. So it's like staggering. So these are already numbers you would probably see in Australia, not in the next 5-10 years. And it's already their reality, and they're already living it for a few years now. But so where you already see a substantial shift in the car park.
Michael, you're saying that was due to the massive government investment.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a combination. So it's interesting. So it definitely required a certain level of stimulus to reach those numbers. Of course, with any new technology, you have certain early adopters that get into this, but to overcome the hurdle of higher cost, if governments are not kind of leveling the playing field with incentives, you would still have at least a majority of users being reluctant to jump on board so quickly. So that certainly you can see a very strong correlation when you look at the policies in Norway that they laid out to electrify the company. They are probably some of the most progressive policies that you would see. And I think in the beginning, that will certainly play a role for most of the countries to see, okay, how progressive is the government? How much are they pushing for this? And there you have a huge range of governments that took very different stands in that matter.
Yeah. You mentioned Tesla. Was Bosch involved in any of the Tesla technology? Were you guys involved in anything?
So unfortunately, this is something I can't disclose. I can only say there's a piece of Bosch in every car.
And if there isn't, would you like some?
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that close that one out. So you're positive about the future? Like I know something that's a little bit scary, as you just said, is it's not possible to own your car. You're going to have to lease it. How do you think that translates to our
aftermarket world.
our demographic, and for all the boys that will be listening to this, we're independent, the independent aftermarket. So it's or even like all of your Bosch car service guys. Where do you think that fits?
I would probably first break it a little bit down. Yeah. So to what would I perceive in Australia? Because obviously you are in a particular part of the world. You have particular government regulations at the moment in play. And I would say that whole EV revolution will be a lot slower in this part of the world. And it really also comes down to some degree at government regulations. The picture is changing a little bit. So there's a really interesting website that I would probably recommend to the audience, and we can maybe put this also into any show notes or into the post. It's called the EV Council of Australia. And the EV Council of Australia puts together a regular report. I think they're doing it maybe twice a year or annually, which gives you a good summary of the EV development in Australia. So what regulations are in place, what are the latest numbers in terms of EV, what are the predictions, what is the forecast, when will this change come, so what is the state of also the political discussions. I think that's a good overview and also a good source for me that helped me to understand the market better. And they just published, I think last month, a new report for 2022. And there was one thing that I found very interesting. So in the different territories, you have a lot of different regulations. But in the ACT, so the Australian Capital Territory, you actually have the most progressive regulations. And guess what? You also have the highest EV share in Australia. So they have about, of new vehicles, 9% share. When new vehicles come online, the rest of the country is around 3%. They can also see, even in the space of Australia, to some degree, might not only be regulations, might also be the type of people are living there, the income levels and so on that are factors.
A lot of public servants.
Also see
a lot of public servants as well.
Yeah, a lot of public servants, and there's probably some people that are taking advantage of some things that are going on at the moment where they can, and probably a little bit, their fingers on the pulse, and they may have a bit more info about what they can use for tax benefits, I would say. But I know they said in the ACT they're not going to sell any petrol powered cars up to 2025 or something, only a couple of years away. So, but they're relatively small.
I think Queanbeyan's population grew by Jack.
But it starts somewhere, right? So and then also might expand. What I also find really interesting is if you, and this is publicly available information, when you look at the OEMs on their exit dates for combustion engine, most of them already published them.
Yeah.
So I think in many cases, even if consumers don't want to make the shift, there will be certainly some models just not available anymore. So, and I could also foresee that some of the OEMs might want to accelerate this, because running different platforms in parallel is also for them very, very costly. All of those companies are going through massive transformations, and most of them have shareholders. So that's also going to be interesting to watch how they will manage and navigate running different platforms and multiple models over time. So I think in general, what I would predict is the choice. So what kind of EVs you could get, the quality, the range would massively increase over the next 3 to 5 years. So consumers would have a lot better choices on the one side, and on the other side, maybe some combustion engine driven models would just simply disappear because OEMs are not able to offer those options into a market, for example, like Australia anymore.
Yeah.
And that will also drive to some extent, I think, that transformation.
Do you think there's any chance for alternative fuels, or do you think they're going to be going out the window as well with ICE engines?
I think hydrogen is interesting, so especially for a country like Australia, because they have technically the resources, especially natural resources, to make that technology work. You have a lot of long distance in the country. So also question with electrification would be, how about all these road trains? So that how to solve those problems in that area. So I think hydrogen could play a role. Still very hard to predict to what extent. So it would take investors, it would take companies to step forcefully into this space. That certainly would be one option. You might see a little bit of synthetic fuels, but they're not very efficient. So probably to a lesser degree, hybrid technology might bridge this also for an extended period in countries like Australia, which of course always good for mechanics, because hybrid is best of both worlds. You have the combustion engine and you still have the EV portions. There's still a lot of things that can fail and can be fixed. So that's probably for me personally always the favorite option.
I personally like hybrid. I agree with you there, Mike. And I was gonna get hybrid. To me is it bridges the gap, because we have range anxiety here for EV. I mean, it's with too longer distances to travel. I was going to bring up synthetic fuels, because there's a whole heap of synthetic fuels being developed at the moment. Some saying they're producing just water out the tailpipe, and I don't know how true they are. But have you heard much about these?
I mean, there's a lot of government funding also going into research and development. And I think that sometimes people look at the whole debate from an as-is position. So they just look at what is feasible, possible today. And then they debate whether there's a future for those technologies. But what you have to factor in, all the money that was going will turn out into invention. So I think in many cases, we simply don't know the efficiency levels that can be reached, the innovations that will come also in terms of range extension. So I would always caution people to draw their conclusions too much looking at the past or the present. So you need to factor this in as well.
Absolutely. That's actually a very good point.
Yeah, well, that may be what we've got right now, but it may not be what we're going to have in the future. Right. I mean, I think that's the only thing, and I mean, I know this is a public podcast, so we're going to be really careful about what you say, and I don't want to be, I believe in climate change. I'm not a climate change denier, but what I truly believe right now in Australia with buying an electric vehicle is you're just moving tailpipe emissions from your tailpipe to somewhere else where there's a coal-fired power station. We are, as a business, my business is sustainable and carbon neutral. We partner with sustainable companies such as Castrol, Bosch, Century. We've all got sustainable models and sustainability systems in place to show that this is the direction that our companies are going to go, and this is what we're going to do. I feel that EV at the moment, and we've got batteries, we've got solar, we recycle, we do bin audits, we do as much recycling, and for me, it's all about emissions. It's always, for the last 30 years of my career, if I ever went to a training seminar and said, why are we doing this? The answer is emissions. We're doing it for emissions. And when I took over the business, it's a no-brainer for me that when I think about my company, I think about emissions. But what I truly believe at the moment is we're literally taking, instead of burning petrol, we're going to burn brown coal to charge up your car overnight when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. And we don't have enough renewables, and we don't have nuclear, and we don't have all these other things. So I think we're just literally moving the tailpipe emission from the city to wherever the coal-fired power station may be, whether that's in Queensland, Lithgow, wherever it might be in Australia. And obviously those coal-fired power stations are getting shut down, so it's going to be and power prices are now about to increase by 50%. I think when we do a per kilowatt hour changeover, I think you're going to go, petrol's actually a good option, even if we looked at what its carbon footprint is based on a new hybrid. I'm not a skeptic, but I'm just a realist really when I come to think about it, because I know we have solar in our building, and the last summer we've had has been a very overcast summer, and when the clouds are there, your panels don't work.
I mean, my comment to this would be, so first of all, it's a very complex problem, so that you need to look at. So now I fully agree with you. So you need to look upstream and downstream as well. So how is energy created that would potentially go into an electric vehicle? And then also how is energy used, so in what way? And it again depends also on the readiness of any country who is putting forward those policies. So how is your percentage of renewable energy in your energy mix? And so if you're pushing that very hard, because in some cases, as you said, in the overall emission, it might actually not work out the way you intend. And so, and especially when you look at modern diesels or modern gasoline machines, actually very low in emission. So they're not having a too bad of a footprint. And they technically can also be a solution to the problem or a bridging technology to overall reducing emissions. So that's still in the overall mix. Also at Bosch, we believe that there's still a role for the traditional combustion engine that needs to be played, and there's still efficiency to be gained. There's also emissions to be reduced because they will not go away so too fast. So they will still, at least we'll sell them for the next couple of years. They will be on the roads for an extended period of time. And again, overall, from the energy mix, you have to solve the problem really end to end. So otherwise, you're, as you said, might fix it on one end, but you just shift the problem to somewhere else.
Yeah.
But again, you always would need to look at this country by country, and different countries are at different stages, have different options, also depend on their geography, where they are. So how much wind energy or like hydro energy they have at their disposal to make those changes, but they need to be made comprehensively. If you're only focusing on one area, you're actually not solving the problem.
No, I sort of feel a little bit like that. There's been a few knee-jerk reactions made at a government level, which are like, we're going down this line and this is where we're going to go. And I just don't think there's enough stuff there to back it up. That's sort of how I agree, because I've made those changes and I've gone down this line, and I sort of go, well, it works and it doesn't work. It costs a lot of money, but it works, and it's a solution for us, and we are literally sustainable and carbon neutral, and we compete with companies like IKEA for sustainability awards, and we beat them once. I haven't beat them this year, but we beat them last year. Can
I ask, guys, considering all this new technology, all this new renewable energy stuff, now I'm going to ask you, Mike, and also Michael, because I think, Mike, you're doing a pretty good job at this. What do you guys think the future workshop's looking like? It's 2030. We've got all these EVs and hybrids running around. What sort of appearance/equipment tooling do you think is going to need to go into these workshops to service these cars?
Who's going first?
Well, I'll ask you both, because I know Mike's doing
number
some
one.
stuff,
Michael can go
Michael
first.
probably has some comments as well.
I'll maybe start. So I think they will probably get bigger in size. So I think the workshop of the future would certainly require investment, and you can only operate such a workshop at a certain scale. So what I would probably foresee that smaller workshops over the next 10, 15 years would decrease in numbers, and larger workshops would appear, especially in the independent aftermarket. You would probably need to tap into new business models, so advanced driver assistance systems, so calibration. So there will be new jobs that would come into your workshop that you need to start doing. Battery repair is another area that all would require upskilling. So in many cases, you would shift from mechanical to electrical. In some cases, almost becoming a software engineer, so to some degree. So also the profession will dramatically change. Also, people will need to heavily invest in training in those areas to make that transformation happening. And I think you also will need to be able to prepare your workshop for fleet business, so that you're able to take on larger clients that you can service. Again, scale will become important, I think, over time. And I think I would see a bright future for those who would be embracing the change, who would be kind of getting their business ready, are ready to invest, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities. Not all of the businesses will make that transition. And so especially when you are working on a business, not necessarily all the time in the business, you would have big opportunities when you really pay attention to that future. And so I see for those who are also today on the forefront, major opportunities in those areas moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I think that's really it's a little bit hard because you probably see a little bit more. And I mean, I do a little bit with the AAA side of things, and I see a little bit more future tech coming through. You're probably even way more ahead with some of the stuff that you get to see at Bosch. I sort of, from a business level now, Costa, I look at it like, from what I can see right now, I sort of see most Australians having one EV and one hybrid. We need the hybrid for range, and we need the EV for around the city. And I think that's probably going to be the push, but we need a bit more help with, we need a bit more help from the government to get charging infrastructure in place. We need to partner with government. There's great opportunities within small business right now. It doesn't matter what small business you are, to work with local government to get charging infrastructure on the streets. Michael, around us, I mean, I have a 110 square meter workshop upstairs, and we have a 400 square meter block of land, which we have all downstairs. We are not in any way, shape or form a large workshop. I probably can't do ADAS. ADAS is one thing I can't do. But we really are trying to be at the forefront and having the conversations with customers about EV. We're quite close to the city. We want to put chargers. My aim is to put every one of our car spaces in our car park, but every bay in the workshop to have some form of charging in it. And I'd also like to get some of our actual infrastructure on the footpath, on the street, across the footpath to the street near the workshop, where we can use our excess solar to charge people's vehicles on the weekend, and obviously sell that. We make money from that, but I want to start negotiating with local council to try to get that. My aim is to be at the forefront and to talk to our customers now about changing to EV. They're going, oh, I'm going to trade my car in. What am I going to buy? To start having that conversation with some of our 3,000 customers that we've got at the moment. And I also believe that 3,000 customers in the future is not enough. When you start to get into EV, we probably need 9,000 customers because there's less stuff to do. And that's where
your actual car count's going to have to increase. And
that's where the scaling, I think, needs to increase to it. We do tires, we do everything. I market as a one-stop shop. With there's not much we don't do. We pretty much just don't do panel. We don't do paint and panel. We do everything else. So my aim would be then, okay, so how do we survive in the future? Is like, well, I say, we have about 3,000 cars we see every year now. Regos are really important in New South Wales. Inspections, the sorts of things that we do that's still going to be doing tires, doing inspections, and doing repairs. I need to scale up on customer count massively over the time. So everyone that buys an EV needs to know they can bring it to us, and we can repair it, and we can do. I'd like to know a little bit more about battery balancing, as they call it, or what they're doing, or some of these service things that they're doing. So, as future tech comes online, we might be leaning on Bosch a little bit more, and that's why it's great to have you guys as partners on the Garage Network, where we can start to understand some of those things that are happening overseas. Because I think that's where we're really, really lucky in Australia that we have. We have America and we have Europe.
Case studies coming.
Well, we have America and we have. I mean, America sort of has our size. Europe has our size, but everything's much closer together. So I think that we're lucky enough that we always look. And Michael, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but most Australians look at America and look at Europe as our little crystal ball to see what's coming next. I'm assuming, hopefully, some of your staff have said that, because that's the way we look at things from the independent world, or even not the independent world. Just anyone in Australia looks at what are we going to be doing in 5 years' time is what they're doing over there right now, and they're dealing with those sorts of problems. So it's good that it sort of happened during COVID. You got to see what happened in Europe, and then we went, oh crap, we need to wear masks, or we need to prepare for the worst. Unfortunately, we were lucky in Australia that we had it all happening everywhere else before it happened here.
I think it's a very smart way to do this. So this is also, to be honest, always my secret of success. If I want to look into the future, I just look at the country where the future is already present today. And so in this, I think is extremely helpful to pay attention of those changes. I also agree with you. There's obviously in the EV space certainly a lot less parts that needs fixing. It's going to be a lot harder beyond the fast fit category. So when you're looking at tires, wipers, cabin filters, brakes, so beyond that, that's going to be also quite often very complex. There's certainly in the independent space opportunities in fast fit calibration, but I would also encourage always people to pay attention on customer service, maybe new services that you can provide to the customers. Look around the world, what's happening, to be prepared, because obviously that shift, the earlier you start thinking about it from a business owner point of view, the more prepared you will be, even though it might not happen in the next 3 to 5 years where you would really feel those changes. I think in many cases, especially in the independent aftermarket, most of the vehicles that would hit that space are already 4 to 5 years old. So I think before the real volume will go through your doors, there's still quite a significant amount of time left to get prepared. But obviously you can also position yourself already at the forefront in many cases. And as you said, I would agree with you, especially when you are in a city location, a lot of customers would probably get an EV at their second car. If they have a trusted workshop they want to go through, they want to make sure that that workshop can at least take care of the simple things for their second car. And then the first, still in many cases, because of distance and charging infrastructure today, might be a hybrid or combustion engine vehicles. It's also where we see the shift happening at this stage.
Yeah, we took a first to market approach on hybrid and EV, and having the boys, everyone's trained. I've done multiple training courses, and we've run the Bosch training course here for all my staff, and it's been really good, and it's been well received from customers. And they're confident and happy, and we've done a few batteries and had a few Teslas through doing tires and doing other things, and it's a key marketing strategy of ours to be first to market in the area, and to push that, to go, think of, if you to think of EV and to think of us, and to think to put the two together, to go, we can do everything. We're not just working on old cars, we work on your new car as well. So
what we could do is, I can say, maybe also send you, we have a nice 10-15 minute video. We can put a link, it's on YouTube, publicly available, that explains a little bit the fast fit opportunities around the EV vehicle. So what could be a traditional workshop already do today on a EV? So what he needs to pay attention. So it gives a very nice quick overview of those things that might be helpful.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we can add a link to when it goes on YouTube. We can add a link to the bottom, and also we'll share that on the Facebook group as well once we get it all together and ready to go. That's awesome.
Yeah, I will send this through also with the link to the EV Council. So anything that we can put in the show notes, we'll send to you guys.
Yeah,
perfect. Cool. Yeah, and obviously, guys that are listening, do your training, because as somebody who's attended the training a couple of times, it really takes away the fear and the anxieties of, oh no, everything's going to be EV. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. They're still going to break. They're still going to need things fixed. So it's not a bad thing at all.
No, there's no need for panic or concern. So I think people should really focus on the opportunity. To be honest, if I would be a mechanic today, I would be excited about
100%. 100%.
Yeah, because the job gets so much more interesting. So with a lot of these components that you can add to this, and it's just a great profession. So, and could just expand also the things that you learn, the technology you get in touch with. It's really fascinating. And I think training can be a good entry point to kind of open a little bit the perspective. As you said, lose maybe the natural barrier that might be there for some people. Yeah. To overcome it, and then really fully embrace it. And I think you guys also on the network are doing a great job in terms of education and kind of informing your audience about this. And I think it's extremely helpful. And also as an industry, that's something we have to do collectively together to master this transformation, because also, to be honest, it's not going to be easy, and all the players have to work collectively together to make this successful. And that's maybe one of the lessons that Norway showed, because they actually really had a lot of challenges. They had to overcome.
Of course, I can imagine.
We have to make sure that we learn collectively from those and work together. In that.
Yeah. No, cool. It's really good.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest key. That's the biggest key. Working
Well,
together.
I think we're stronger together, and I think that's one of the powers of the Garage Network and some of the stuff that we're doing. And again, Michael, I can't thank you enough for you and for Bosch and Bosch Automotive Aftermarket and everyone coming on board with us and being one of our partners. I think it's really a credit to you guys
amazing
for getting involved, and thank you, because you're not paying for this beer, but you pay for all of the things that we do on the Garage Network, and one of them is networking and bringing everyone together and trying to just, remove that lonely,
that stigma.
Just that you're on your own. We actually, if we all work together, we're a better industry. We're better people. You feel better about yourself. You feel better about the trade. And the world's a better place if people are nicer to each other. So I think that's what we're all about.
No, I fully agree. So it's important to create community in that space. And also share experience and learning. And this is also, again, how the way I look at it, also together with our competitors. And so equally, we actually all work in the same direction to keep all the vehicles moving in Australia also today and in the future.
Yeah, perfect. Well said. Well said. Excellent. Do you have any more questions, Mike, for Michael?
No, I'm done. I'm blown away. It was nice. It was great.
Even though we record, I'm just going to go back and watch it again. That was fun.
Michael, do you have any questions for us?
I mean, we maybe can cut this out afterwards, but if you have another 10-15 minutes, I would have a few questions to you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Well. Go for it. We'll leave it in there, then we'll decide depends how personal they get. No.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I guess the one of the first questions for you guys would be, so what made you decide to take an active role, create the Garage Network? So what was the key driver for both of you to take time out of your busy schedules? You're both entrepreneurs, you're extremely busy during the day, so to make space for this. So what drove you to this?
I'll give you my angle first. Then I don't know, Mike probably has a similar one, but I'll give you mine first. So for myself, I felt like before the Garage at Work, I felt like this industry has given so much to. I think for myself, I feel quite fortunate in what it's given me and my family. My dad's a mechanic as well, so I'm second generation mechanic, and I feel quite fortunate. We had pretty good everything. Like business is always good, and even till now, still run I feel quite successful and feel very fortunate in that sense. So I think that the industry supplied so much to me. I always was looking for a way to sort of try and give something back to, because I remembered myself when I was 18, 9, 10 years old, starting a business, stressed out, almost not knowing if you're doing anything right, no one to speak to because you're doing it yourself. I didn't really want many people to feel that anymore. I remember feeling very, very lonely and alone a lot of the time. And then we started chatting with he's actually one of the directors of the Garage Network, Jeff Taylor, Jeff Taylor. So he always used to say, you've got to meet up. You got to meet Mike, you got to meet this guy, you got to meet that guy. And I was like, well, just invite him over, we'll have a barbecue, we'll catch up. That got delayed a bit, but then eventually we, mind you, Mike only lives, about 5 to 8 Ks away from where my workshop was. So quite close, but in life, busy, never made a time. So then we made a sort of agreement that we'd all go to Melbourne together and meet at the AAA. I'll let Mike discuss how we met. But I think it was really, for myself, it was the first time where I could meet with other automotive professionals that I could see are having the same struggles, are having the same, where I was feeling, it's just my problem that I have and no one else. Everyone else has had these great businesses and I'm the only one that has these hurdles. But then when you sit down and spoke to everyone, we had the exact same things in common, which to me was like, I felt supported straight away. And I was like, everyone should be feeling this support. Like there's no way you should be going through everyday life, stressed out, concerned, thinking you're doing something wrong, when in reality, that's not just business, and then having someone that'd back you or just tell you, yes, you are doing the right, that's how I do mine. Like, oh, I'm doing the right thing, That support for me was, couldn't put a price behind it. And then from there, I think we started at 5 people.
No, we made Michael. I'm going to interrupt you there because the reality is we had Jeff. Jeff was going around everyone's workshop selling. He was selling tune-up at the time. He was selling something else, but he's a rep and he was on the road and he'd go to everyone's workshops and he was a good judge of character. And going, you'd get on really well with him and you'd get on really well with him. So listen, he started this little Facebook group, which we called the Sydney Garage Network at the time. And we all were communicating with each other and helping each other. And I totally get where Costa's coming from. I mean, I'm third generation mechanic and I made a lot of mistakes. Like my grandfather and my dad were not formally trained as business people. They were mechanics, and my grandfather was a fisherman and a mechanic, and he loved his fishing, and dad was just put his heart, life, soul, everything into the business for 25 years, or more 20 odd years. And then I bought the business off my dad and my uncle and started my business. And I made a lot of mistakes. I'm lucky I've got a wife who's in marketing and has a little bit of corporate experience, who now works with me, who took my business, or took 313 Automotive to the next level. And I'm not ashamed of saying any of that, because I was too much average. I mean, I'm a good mechanic, but I'm probably not a great business person. And I've since learnt so much stuff from her, from life experience, and I don't want that to go to waste. So we went to Melbourne in 2019. So with the Sydney Garage Network having about 20 of us.
Not even, it was like 7 people.
Yeah, there was about 9 of us went, or 7 or 8 of us went to Melbourne. And I walked away from Melbourne with Jeff and with Costa and said, guys, I got an idea. I think we should go and partner with brands like Century, Bosch, TuneUp, all the people that we've got come on board with us at the moment. And I said, I've been going to this AAA show for 20 years. This is the best show I've ever had, because I've actually got to hang out with people who know my plight and know my problems. I had a wife who worked in marketing, who didn't really know automotive business. She worked in marketing for a produce company. I could always talk to Dad, but Dad didn't really have much great insight and ideas to change things up, and wasn't. I mean, I'm pretty on. You said it. I'm entrepreneurial, so give me an idea or give me a thought process, and I'm going to go right. I want to run with that. And then I've now got a marketing manager, or my wife, partner, who says, "You want to let's do a little bit of research. Let's do a bit of okay. That's fine. Let's put a business plan together." And I've learned how to do that and how to sort of go, yeah, this is going to work and this is going to take off and this will be really, really good. That's for us in the business. But it was really lovely to go away with some guys who were at a stage where I'd been at, where I could actually give them a little bit of mentorship and a bit of help and go, how about you do this? And why don't you try this? This worked for us. This may work for you. It may not. You need to do your own little bit. And I felt it was amazing. It was just a really nice place to be. Your friends and your family don't really understand what you do in the automotive industry every day. The guys that your peers and the guys that we have as friends on the Garage Network, everyone knows what we're going through, because all of us have probably been there one day before. And it was just really, it was an idea that we came up with, that we said, let's create this network, let's commercialize it to an extent. None of us take any money out of it. For the first 2 years, we just paid for it out of our own pocket.
So we were taking money out of our own businesses to make sure that everyone can get together, hang out, have a conversation, and break down those, the guy down the road is no longer your enemy. They're okay. The guy down the road on a hot day, take him some ice cream. It's okay. They're all going to be friends.
Listen, lend them tools. There's so many cars in your area. There's so many. We did this the other day on the car park data from the AAA. There are so many cars in your area. You are not competing with the guy down the road. For us, we're trying to make independent workshops come closer together to create a network or a franchise group, we want everyone to come together, to work together, to realize that we are not each other's enemy. We need to work together. There's enough work out there for everyone. If we all work collaboratively together and help each other, I don't mean that in a collusional way, but I mean in a collaborative way where we actually come together and help each other, the industry will be a better place. It'll be a better place for the younger kids to come through. It'll be a place where you want to work. Considering we spend most of our lives at work, if work can be a nice, happy place where you're working with, having fun with the guy down the road and helping the guy next door, or helping a guy on the garage network case across the other side of the country, the amount of information that we all hold, and I got sick of it. I got sick of a guy saying, I'm not going to share that because that's my little secret. Problem is he kept his little secret, but he never ever shared it with anyone, and he never saw another one of the same car. Right? He might have had a Captiva and he knew the answer to that question. What we've done is we create the garage network where we encourage you to go, if you've solved that problem and someone asks for that help them solve their problem.
But also it's also a safe environment. People can ask a question.
Yeah,
sometimes there's some environments where I don't want to ask that because I feel stupid. Well, we try really hard to eradicate that stigma of, the old saying of no question is a stupid question. Absolutely correct. Absolutely. Would you rather somebody ask before they do something or attempt something and break it?
No, I want them to ask.
I want them to ask.
But Michael, I've got to tell you that there's been some stuff happen that's brought me almost to tears, Costa to tears. We've had some people on the network reach out to us and say, I was going to leave the trade. I left the trade. I found you guys. I came back. I couldn't believe something like this was happening. Other people that have gone, I was at the end. I didn't want to do this anymore. You guys have brought me back. You've saved, and it was just that happened when we were spending our own money. And some of it's happened since we've had partners and sponsors, but it just encouraged us to keep going. It really
fueled
did.
The fire. That was a catalyst. When we got that first phone call, we were together. When we got that first phone call, it was like, that was absolute chaos. That's it. We're doing the right thing. We're actually helping people.
I don't care what anyone says. I don't care how many people bag us. And we've had people that have abused us publicly, physically, or tried to abuse us physically. After hearing some of the things that people have said to us, I'm like, swing away, mate. If you don't like me and you don't like what I'm going to say, punch me, whatever you want to do, but I'm not going to stop. And you can, because I truly believe we're doing the right thing, and we're making our industry better.
It's a needed, important service, and I guess that's also what you hear throughout the feedback. And so again, it's creating a community of people who have a deep understanding of their situation, and of course, it just connects. And it's so easier, I guess, to connect with people who kind of can understand what we're going through on their everyday level. So I totally understand it. What was the most surprising thing that you encountered in this work, which you thought, oh wow, I never thought about this? So anything that will come to mind?
I'm going to tell you something in a second. I'm going to go to the bathroom, but I've got to tell. I'm going to tell you how I met Costa.
So before we do that, we're going to round up because that's going to be an offline conversation.
Don't forget to join our private Facebook page if you are an automotive technician, and also subscribe to our YouTube and our podcast channel. They are all called The Garage Network. Thanks, guys, and see you next time.